Our first scripture reading comes to us from the book of Job, chapter 38, verses 1 to 7 and 34 to 41. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determines its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds so that a flood of waters may cover you? Can you send forth lightning so that they may go and say to you, 'Here we are'? Who has put wisdom in the inward parts or given understanding to the mind? Who has the wisdom to number the clouds? Or who can tilt the water skins of the heavens when the dust runs into a mass and the clods cling together? Can you hunt the prey for the lion or satisfy the appetite of the young lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in their covert? Who provides for the raven its prey when its young ones cry to God and wander about for lack of food?" The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Our gospel lesson this morning comes from Mark chapter 10, beginning at verse 35. Listen again for God speaking to you. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You know, one of the best indicators of the truth of the Gospels is that the people who wrote them didn't always paint themselves in the best light. Today's gospel reading is an embarrassing account of the disciples of Jesus jockeying for power and position. What makes it even more astounding is the context in which we find the story. In Mark chapter 10, Jesus has just blessed little children, saying that we must become like them to enter God's kingdom. He then confronts the rich young ruler who finds out that his own achievements in wealth and righteousness gain him nothing in God's kingdom. And finally, right before this incident, Jesus gives the third and most detailed prediction of his death. His calling and glory as the Son of Man is in his death. So, what do these Zebedee brothers do? First, they make a childish request of Jesus. "Do for us whatever we ask." Whenever someone asks in that way, you know something is amiss. And it is. Instead of seeking God's will, they seek their own. And that's always a mistake. They want Jesus to do things their way. And even though Jesus just described his method to glory, they still know this guy has amazing power. James and John were two of the three disciples who saw the transfiguration on the mountaintop back in chapter 9. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus informs them. With great power or position comes great responsibility. If power or position is going to mean anything lasting, it always entails hard work, sleepless nights, constant battles, and personal struggles. It means getting blamed for things that are not your fault and have to fix problems you did not cause. It requires discernment, figuring out the wisest course of action, which is rarely clear. It involves research and collaboration and patience and learning. Leadership requires communication and compassion, courage and resilience. Leadership always involves sacrifice. If the perks that sometimes come with a high position are the reason someone wants that position, it will not be worth it. Do you know the name Henry Nouwen, or more correctly pronounced Henri Nouwen? He was a Dutch Catholic priest, professor, writer, and theologian, and although he died in 1996, he remains one of the most influential spiritual writers of our time. Henri had a distinguished teaching career at some of the most prestigious academic institutions in America, including Notre Dame, Yale, and Harvard. Yet the place that influenced Henri most profoundly was the antithesis of status and influence. In 1986, he gave up his powerful and influential position and accepted the position of pastor at L'Arche Daybreak, a community for people with intellectual disabilities. What kind of person does that? Who trades a promising career to work with people who will never understand how smart or how great he is? Nouwen said it was there at L'Arche that he found the kind of community he had been looking for all his life, and it remained his home until his death. Give us the best seats, James and John boldly ask. We want to be great in the kingdom of God. We called it first, and we are your favorites. They have a point. They were the first to be called to follow Jesus, and they left everything to do so. They have sat at Jesus' feet and learned. They've witnessed miracle after miracle. They were sent out 2 by 2 to proclaim the gospel, and they themselves cast out many demons and cured the sick. And they were, with Peter on that mountaintop, just those three, allowed to see Jesus in all his glory. Isn't it okay to rise to the top, to seek a promotion, to get a position where we feel like we can really do some good? The world tells us that power and position are the way to get things done. The world says the only way to affect change is to be in the room where decisions are made. That's not your prerogative, Jesus informs them. These positions have been set by God since before the foundation of the world, and they will not be bought or schemed into. They're not up for popular vote. I'm sure that whoever occupies these seats will be a surprise. When God's people do try to claim the best seats or to be God's favorites, holier than thou, and therefore deserving of certain privileges, it's always divisive. This move by James and John to corner Jesus and call these positions makes everyone angry, and it harms their relationships. You may remember that on Promotion Sunday in September, we had an ice cream truck out in the circle out front. I love ice cream. We had a plethora of wonderful flavors available and only one person dipping, so it took time to decide and then to serve each person, and of course the line backed up. I didn't get in line until around 10:30, and knowing I had to be ready for the service at 11, the kind people in line told me to go ahead and cut in the line. I said no at first, but then they prevailed, and I cut in front of the line, and I got my cappuccino chip ice cream. I love ice cream. Did I mention that? But I couldn't eat much. Cutting in front of others made me sick to my stomach. Using my position to get my ice cream before someone else goes against everything I believe about what my role is. And that's partly because of this passage and partly because of my Walk to Emmaus training. At the Walk to Emmaus, which is the United Methodist version of Presbyterian pilgrimage, clergy always eat last, if there is anything left. We yield to others. That's our calling. It's not to gain whatever perks we can by being clergy. And so I spent that Sunday afternoon begging God's forgiveness. And I beg yours. I will never, ever do that again. I will always give up what I have so that someone else can have more. And that is what I freely and joyfully signed up for 25 years ago. I do want to be great in God's kingdom. I want to be a great pastor. But when power comes with religious greatness, we are always tempted to abuse that power. From FLDS prophet Warren Jeffs, who used his power to rule tyrannically and abuse children, to a rash of megachurch pastor resignations in North Texas because of sexual misconduct and financial impropriety, we see it clearly. Unchecked power in God's kingdom only leads to hypocrisy and harm. And as slow as the Presbyterian way of doing things is, it works to prevent this. So how do we become great in God's eyes? Greatness in God's kingdom equals service. That should come as no surprise. The one person in the whole universe who has the right not to be humble is Jesus Christ, who is God. Did not consider his status as something to be exploited, but came to us as one of us, humbling himself and becoming a servant. How many powerful people do you know who are willing to do that? The one we follow possessed the riches and glory in heaven, and yet for us became poor. Jesus washed disciples' feet. He came to give his life. Should not his followers do the same? And what he accomplished was world-changing. Could our humble service be world-changing too? I love Presbyterian pilgrimage for many reasons, one of which is how you go about staffing a weekend. To staff, you must have attended, and then you get to pay for the privilege of serving. Not just the check you write for your room and board, but the time, one day longer than the pilgrims, the energy. Setting up and taking down camp is quite a chore, in addition to all the retreat activities, the planning and training that happens months and even years before. Staff stays up later than all the pilgrims and wakes up earlier than all the pilgrims so that everything is done for them. Staff prays and blesses, serves and loves. 28 people are doing such this weekend, many from Grace and Canyon Creek. So it's no wonder that pilgrims leave there feeling loved, encouraged, strong, joyful, and grateful. The way God's humble love gets communicated and seeps into hearts and minds is through our service to others. I could spend the rest of the hour telling you more ways that the people of Grace are servants through ESL, meal trains, homebound communion, becoming a deacon or elder, and on and on. And yet, in the Christian community in the United States, I find this less and less. And I hear more and more in so many words. I want, I need, I deserve, I don't like, that's not my job, that's not my problem, my way or the highway. And I'm pretty confident Jesus as well, wishes we heard more. What do you need? How can I help? Can I pray for you? Take my seat. I love. I hope. I'm working hard to be like Jesus. Let's work on it together. But again, this posture is becoming rare. Mark Schultz shared how every year at Halloween, he keeps a potato in the bowl of candy in front of his door, replacing it when chosen by a trick-or-treater. Last year, he reported, tonight's kids chose potato more than 25 times, each triumphantly proclaiming to friends and family, I got a potato. One kid shouted, a potato, just like last year. And another group said, oh, you're the potato house. Y'all are legends. This has become an unexpected and joyful tradition. Kids are given the free choice. And over again, someone chooses potato. It's not sugary or flashy. It's solid and real, nutritionally valuable, and outside the box. It's countercultural. Service is potato in our situation. Every day we're given a choice, candy or potato, entitlement or service. I encourage you, choose potato. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached in one of his sermons, if you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's the new definition of greatness. And this morning he said, the thing that I like about it is that Jesus, by giving that definition of greatness, means that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to be in a C-suite or be the most gifted athletically or the smartest or the most charismatic or know the most Bible verses or possess the most talent to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant. Do you know who is really great? God. We talk sing and read about that every Sunday. And we do it because it helps put ourselves in perspective. We read it from Job this morning. God laid the foundation of the earth. God hung the stars and shut up the seas. God cares for all creation. And God is the one who knows in just what seats to place James and John and each one of us so that our service will do the most good. It is when we trust in God above all else and don't rely on our understanding, as the proverb on the front of your bulletin announces, that we end up in the seats exactly where God needs us. And He will make our paths straight. So what do you say? Can we live Jesus' definition of being great?